I didn't want to make this video, but I feel like I have to. Many transgender people meet the point when their old relationships don't work anymore, but they're suffocated by the fear of loss. Hello, I'm Kira, a transgender woman sharing my experience of transitioning from male to female. Today I will talk about my relationships with my ex-wife and how I came out to her and how we remained friends and co-parents. My ex-wife and I met 11 years ago, and I immediately fell in love with her. At the time I was working as a photographer, and I was doing a graduation photo album in the university she was attending. There were 20 or 30 people in her group that day, but I immediately noticed her. We went on a few dates, but that time I had relationships that were falling apart, so we paused for a couple of months before we could truly enjoy our time together. Once my previous relationships ended, I called her and asked if she would like to meet. Soon after, she moved into my apartment and we began building our life together. We aimed for a traditional conservative family, with me working and her taking care of the home. I was raised by a family that was determined to make me a true man. My ex-wife was also raised in a conservative family, where men worked and women stayed home. This setup worked for us at the time because we didn't know any other way to live. We saw every alternative as a mistake or something sinful. No one told us there were many other ways to live as a family. We got married and had our first son. By then, I had already told her about my cross-dressing. I wished it to become our everyday reality, but I struggled to understand how could that happen. I had an image in my mind of successful, strong, and caring father and husband. There was no room in that image for someone who was also a woman and wore female clothes. I couldn't imagine looking the way how I felt inside, while being the person that I had to be. Adding to that pressure were the expectations of my relatives, especially the closest ones. I felt like I would be betraying them, but in reality I was betraying myself, and that had to stop. Every transgender person I've spoken with mentioned the persistent fear of loss during their transition, and I'm not different. I was mentally afraid of losing my wife and not meeting that idealistic image in my mind of a man that I had to be. I don't blame anyone for this. Society isn't quick to change, and it seems that its main goal is to keep everyone the same. If someone is different from the majority, they can be easily sacrificed. No matter how open-minded we are, we're still part of that society, as are our loved ones. It's terrifying to be thrown out of the tribe, in this case out of the family. In this situation, you're left on your own. I was afraid my wife wouldn't support and accept me on my transition, because it went against our conservative views and values. I tried to fight my inner feelings. I did my best to live according to that idealistic image of son, husband, and a man. But gender dysphoria is a thing that you can't beat or outrun. It's always stronger and faster than you. The longer you fight it, the stronger it gets, and at some point it suffocates you. So in my mind I had myself trying to finally live as who I truly am on one scale, and on the other one, my family and beloved ones. It was a very hard choice. I would never wish anyone to be in such a situation, but that is the reality of being a transgender person. My wife knew that something is going wrong, but she couldn't help me or even suspect that I was a woman. Transgender people often master this ability of wearing a mask and hiding their feelings for years. Sometimes we even start to believe in the role we're playing. The further it goes, the more painful it is when we realize who we truly are. Unfortunately, many transgender people hold it inside for their whole life and suffer until their last day. I couldn't allow this to happen, so I came out to my ex-wife. Before coming out, I was in a horrible mental state, feeling lost and depressed. I saw other people enjoying their life and couldn't even imagine what that felt like. I knew that it was wrong and I wanted to leave, so I had to give myself a chance to transition from male to female. At the same time, I fully realized that I'm risking my family and my relationships with friends. But there was no turning back as I crossed that line. Before transitioning, we can base our understanding only on someone else's experience and knowledge. There are multiple resources like threads on Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, where thousands of people share their stories of transitioning. At the very beginning, I felt myself lost and I had no clue what information to believe and where to start. So I began consuming every piece of information I could find. Pretty soon I realized that not all of it was relevant to me. I knew I was a transgender woman, so experience of non-binary people was not appropriate for me. At that time I was 31, so I filtered out any information about younger people who started transitioning as teenagers. I was married and had 2 kids, so I had a lot of roadblocks that a single person didn't face. As I continued, my sampling got narrower and narrower. That was during that crucial pre-transition state, when I found several people with almost identical stories as mine. I believed that I could follow their path and everything would be okay, but that was just an illusion. Every transgender person eventually is left on their own, with their unique life and situation, and no one can show them the right way to go. Despite the most supportive community I've ever seen, I was still left on my own at the beginning of the journey. I could only predict and tell my wife about the changes to come, based on someone else's experience. I thought that most of the changes would involve eliminating depression and dysphoria, changing the body, and presenting myself publicly as a female. I hoped that other people would perceive my transition in a change of appearance, name, and pronouns. In reality, it's like jumping with your closed eyes. You can never predict the outcome while standing on the edge. Making promises and deals is the last thing you should do before starting transitioning. After coming out, I told my ex-wife that I would like to start medical and social transition as soon as possible. I knew it would be hard for her, but I couldn't live any longer with depression and gender dysphoria. I focused on doing everything to get gender dysphoria diagnosis and prescription for HRT. Thanks to a combination of luck and my own effort, it took only 2 months. During this period, our relationship started to transform. I was lost and scared and asked for support from my ex-wife. I've never done that before, so it was a big surprise for both of us. But she took it positively. So I became more open about my feelings and emotions. I knew that she was the only person I could trust at that time and tell everything that was happening in my mind. I shared with her my emotions, concerns, future plans, and so anticipated changes after my transition. It's common for many transgender people to put themselves first during early stages of transition. I can hardly imagine a bigger change in someone's life than this. I clearly remember the day when I got my HRT prescription. It was a happy moment for me and I wanted to share it with my closest person. So I called my ex-wife after my appointment with the endocrinologist. Excitement filled me, but she was mostly silent. It was a hard period for her. When I started HRT, most of the depression and anxiety faded away. Soon I began noticing changes in my body. It was like opening a Christmas gift, the one that I was waiting for so long. It felt incredible and confirmed that I was right to believe in someone else's experience. My leap with closed eyes was likely going to end with a soft landing and a new beginning. My mentality began transforming and I shared it with my wife. I felt that some of my old family roles no longer suited me. I had this image in my head of an ideal woman, someone who always looks perfectly, kind, empathetic, and radiates femininity. There was an internal conflict between the old version of myself, the someone who always took care of everyone else, and a new me that needed protection and care for herself. Another significant change happened when I began thinking about SRS, or the bottom surgery. I read a lot of stories of other transgender women who saw it as a turning point in their lives. It is a major surgery, irreversible, and it affects many aspects of life, especially the intimate ones. At that time I experienced genital dysphoria, but it wasn't severe. I had to think long and hard before taking such an important step in my transition. I shared these thoughts with my ex-wife, and I wouldn't lie, she wasn't surprised. She told me that she had guessed what I was thinking, and she was just waiting for it to come up. I'm very grateful for her honesty, and she told me that this surgery would be a major issue for her in our future relationships. So I knew what the consequences would be if I would decide to go through with it. We had a lot of discussions about our future and family, especially regarding significant changes. At some point we realized that we have to grow and become more independent and healthy individuals. It was necessary to focus on our own mistakes, rather than finding faults in each other. We reached a crisis period that every family faces at some point. On top of that, my transitioning was having a huge impact on our family. Eventually, we came to a point where our sexualities no longer matched, and it was another reason for our decision. We realized that the only way to keep ourselves happy and mentally healthy is to live separately, as co-parents and friends, but not as a couple. It was a hard decision, followed by a lot of pain and tears. One of my biggest fears before transitioning, the fear of loss, became a reality. We both tried transforming ourselves and our relationships because the old way wasn't working. It's difficult for both partners to go through such changes. We both attended therapy and gave ourselves enough time. We both transformed, each in our own way. We became stronger and wiser, and gained a lot of new experience while exploring ourselves. But in the end, these two new personalities no longer matched. We had already given each other everything we could, and couldn't give any more. Over the past 10 years, we grew together and shared a lot of happy and sad moments. We were blessed by having 2 kids, whom we both love. I have no regrets, and I'm very grateful for that time. I'm happy that we're still friends. We're sharing what's happening in our lives, and we talk about our future relationships with new partners. My main goal of this video was to show that you should do your best before asking anything from your partner. When you've done everything possible, either you enjoy the result or just acknowledge that old relationships doesn't work for you anymore. I don't want to ignore my needs and be ashamed of my feelings. It took me many months of medical and social transition to finally realize who I truly am. I'm exploring my sexuality, new gender roles, and confronting old fears. I'm examining every setting in my mind to determine whether I really need it or it's destroying me. We all have only one life, and there is no point of suffering and bringing sufferings into our partner's life. You owe it to yourself to be happy and content. It's very hard to separate from someone with whom you share so many connections and memories. It's a stressful period for both partners, but gradually you will feel better, the pain will fade, and you will meet new people who accept and support you. You'll meet a new partner who knows only your true self, and with whom you can build something new and wonderful. Every morning you should ask yourself 2 questions. Am I happy with this person? And can I make this person happy? If the answer is no for a long time, and if you've done all your best, just let it go and don't blame each other. No matter how long you've been together, how old are you, and what others would think about your decision, you owe to yourself to live and live happily. And as long as you're breathing, it's never too late. If you want to hear more about my fears and why it took me so long to realize who I truly am, please check my previous video. Thank you for being with me. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and see you soon in my next video. Bye.